morning and welcome to Frank's School. This is going to be a little bit more personal than what maybe belongs in a course like this, but to be honest, I think I should share it because it was noteworthy to me. The Coimbra University, you weren't allowed to film within the buildings themselves. Thomas and I were there. Shirley was back at the hostel. There was no filming. Well, what I want to mention is the effect that had on me. That's what I mean. This is kind of going to be more personal than just views, details of what a tourist sees. As we were walking around in there, we saw various things like the dungeon, the virtually dungeon, pitch black, where students were put for discipline. It was a medieval dungeon that was later used for academic discipline. And the library, but at one point we were looking in a glass window at a rather large hall, and there was this a guy sitting at a table, and there weren't very many people in the hall, and then there were 4 or 5 guys sitting on the side, sort of up above him, and there was a small audience that were listening, and I might not have realized what that was because we were always moving along pretty fast. But then I realized this was a student who was presenting his, I think it's called the oral part of the presentation of a thesis. At least see the bad effect was I really did not like Harvard, and I was sort of suddenly thrown back to Harvard. I said to Thomas, I better get out of here. This was having a bad effect on me. Back at Harvard, and see, in Portugal, Coimbra is the university city of the entire country. You might say it's completely centralized. There are other schools elsewhere, but it's known as the city of knowledge. I'm just not sure what other, well, there are other countries that are like that. One of the oldest universities in Europe, well, you see, Harvard is the oldest university in the United States. And in a way, it's similar. At Harvard, I was an English major. And there came a time, I think when I was a junior, where you had to decide on what your thesis subject would be. A thesis. You had to do a thesis. And I was given an advisor. And I told the advisor, I don't remember his name, but I remember the event. I told him, I don't want to do a thesis. And he said, I said, no. Do I have to do a thesis to graduate? I think I told him. And he said, no, but it will be the end of your career as in English. Well, that was an odd thing to say in a way because I became an English teacher, and I didn't see how that was going to end my career as an English teacher. But he meant to go on to become a professor or whatever. I think that's what he meant. But in any case, I said no because there was too much at Harvard to learn that was not specialized. I did not want to put that much of my time into a single subject that had to do with what an English major would normally study. Plus, I was a slow reader, and I was struggling anyway. I wanted to study botany. I wanted to study other things that were available besides English, and there wasn't a single subject that I was willing to give that much time to, and more. I think later on, I did the effect of a thesis, that enormous amount of research and writing. When I wrote the working papers for a homestead engineer's handbook, when I wrote that, and that's part of that. Well, I've shown that in this course. The Decentralist Manifesto is the name I give now to the first 50 pages of it. Very, very thoroughly, intensely researched, and then that later led to Wedge's paradigm. And even again in this course, if you really felt like doing some research and looked into videos, I called it DACT and Enacting, Decentralist Action and Inaction. This might have been IONS. QV, which you could go look if you want. But in any case, I probably put way more effort into that research and that writing than a college student would ever put into writing his thesis. But the thing is, why it had this bad effect on me, I guess at Coimbra, was because there I saw a student, a young man, sitting before a council of elders, presenting his work orally and defending his work, which I suppose is all okay. I mean, that's the way it's usually done. But I knew that had I been in that situation, I would have failed at it, because there's no way a sort of a council of elders would have been able to go where I was going in my mind at that time. I no doubt I cannot really explain this very well, but what might help is later on I read Thomas Kuhn's essay, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, and I think I basically embraced it. And in it, elsewhere in the course, I've talked about this. In it, he argued that scientific advances don't go along by a gradual accumulation of knowledge, but rather they advance by revolution. A certain paradigm is there, but then something is learned or discovered that shakes that paradigm up, and you get a whole new paradigm. Yeah, probably some of my viewers aren't even understanding what I'm saying. Well, I saw as that council, and I couldn't hear a thing, I just see it through the glass window. There I saw what in the 60s we called the establishment. There was the long-standing tradition of professors, and they were listening to somebody young, and they were going to pass judgment on whether or not his work was good enough. And even the very word of education, I put that there because to me, I was so late in life learning this. In a way, I never accepted it. That education was, sounds so cynical, but I think there's truth in it. That education is a way of keeping the young minds on the right track. Leading them. It has to do with the word leading them so they learn what's already known, maybe advance it a little bit. To me, education was about teaching somebody how to go out and question and learn new things if they wanted. Well, in any case, I knew I wasn't going to be real eloquent with this, but it had a bad effect on me. These feelings were just welling up of my great discontent when I was at Harvard, and I guess I would say that I come away from Coimbra with that feeling that it's an interesting historical city and there's lots to see. But being an establishment, being the university 800 years old or whatever, they're not for me. Well, I tried. In any case, that's the odd thing that happened while I was in there. And I should say Thomas, at first he was so puzzled at my reaction. But as I tried to explain to him what was going on, and I told some of this, he understood. And I actually think he got a little bit impassioned too. I don't know. I'd have to ask him how much he remembers of that. All right, bye for now.